Okay, we have 1 minute. All right, so hello everyone, and welcome to the January 10th, 2024 regular council meeting for the Village of Lytton. I'd like to take a moment to remind everyone to please turn off your videos, mute your microphones, and to allow council to begin the proceedings. Just to let you know, we are all being recorded and broadcasted on the Village of Lytton YouTube channel. If anyone is looking for a video recording of this meeting or past meetings, you can go to the Village YouTube channel and watch it there. Thank you, Your Worship. You may call the meeting to order.
Thank you. So I call this meeting of the regular council meeting of January 10th, 2024, our first council meeting of the new year at 7 o'clock. So I want to begin by respectfully recognizing that the Village of Lytton is located on the unceded traditional territory of the Ntlaka'pamux people, and that we are incredibly grateful that our community is here on this beautiful land. At the council table tonight, we have a number of guests. And so we have with us tonight the Lytton Fire Rescue Captains, Dion Moody and Kyle Parker. We have Brian Baxter, who is our Municipal Operations Manager. Kathy Walters is here in accordance with our council procedure bylaw as Deputy Corporate Officer. And I have Councillor Noni McCann here with me here at the table. The other three councillors are joining us by Zoom, Councillor Toss, Councillor Lightfoot, and Councillor Michelle. So we'll begin by adopting the agenda for tonight's meeting. So I'll need a motion to do so.
Also move.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Toss. All those in favor?
Aye.
And carried. So now we'll move to the adoption of minutes of the December 13th regular meeting. So we need a motion.
I'll move to adopt the minutes. Toss.
Thank you. A seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor McCann. Any errors or omissions? Hearing none. All those in favor of adoption?
Yeah.
Aye.
And carried. We're going to move right on to item number 6, which is delegation and presentations. And we have a presentation tonight regarding our audited financial statements for the year 2022. And Mario is joining us from BDO Canada LLP.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. And as mentioned, we're here to present the audited financial statements for the Village of Lytton for the year ended December 31st, 2022. So I'll share my screen. And as I move through the financial statements, if there are any questions that you have, please feel free to interrupt me. I won't be able to see everybody if you're raising your hand or waving at me on screen, but happy to make this as interactive as possible. And so before we jump into the financial statements, I wanted to quickly touch on page 3 of the financial statements, and this is management's responsibility for financial reporting. And this is actually one of the most overlooked pages within the financial statements for any government. But I would argue that's most important because sets the table for the role of everybody that is in the room tonight. And everybody that has been involved in the financial statements does have a role to play. And so the first highlighted item is that these financial statements have been prepared by management. While we do assist with the aggregating of the information and the note disclosures, they are ultimately management's responsibility. And we've had various meetings throughout to make sure that they are comfortable and have approved the statements to come to you tonight. The village itself as an entity maintains a system of internal controls to make sure that the information that's being collected throughout the year and that the spending is appropriate and that all the revenue is being recorded, all that goes in so that we have good information going into the financial statements, which means good information coming out. Mayor and council does play a role as well, and it's important to remember that although I interact with my team mostly with management, I am accountable to mayor and council because pursuant to the community charter, I'm appointed by you. And so this is your opportunity to review the financial statements and recommend their approval, which is required under the community charter. And this is also your opportunity to ask questions of me to make sure that you're satisfied with the work that was done. And our role is to express an opinion on the financial statements, which is done based on the testing that we were able to perform. And so now we move on to the independent auditor's report. And as we had last year, we are not issuing an opinion on the financial statements. And the reason why we're not issuing an audit opinion is, of course, because of the tragic events that happened back in 2021. And with the records being destroyed, we knew that the financial statements, what we were able to see for the 2021 year was good, and we didn't have any concerns over it. But because there were missing records, we weren't able to fully complete the audit. And so, but when we think about financial statements, it's kind of a living document from year to year, where from one year to the next, it will continue on moving. And so because we have our accounts payable, our accounts receivable at the end of 2021 impacts the results in 2022, this is a 2-year issue that we have to deal with that we still can't issue an opinion this year. But our report's been updated to say that it's because of what happened in 2021 that we're not issuing an opinion. And the hope is that for the 2023 audit, that we will be issuing an audit opinion. It's not to say that we have concerns. All the testing that we did was complete, and we were able to identify that the financial statements are supported. But because there is a gap of we don't know what we don't know, this is why we have this here. And because this is a new council as well, I want to highlight that before we went down this journey of having a no opinion on the financial statements, we did have discussions with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs in advance, and they were aware that this was going to be happening, as well as Municipal Finance Authority was made aware in the past as well. So all that happened because of what happened in 2021. But next year, we should be back to regular audit opinions. So is there any questions on the audit opinion before I start moving through the numbers?
No.
Okay, perfect. So we now go to the statement of financial position. So this is a snapshot of all of your assets and liabilities and your equity at the end of the year. And so 2022 compared to 2021. And there's no real surprise that we did see, if we look at your total cash and short-term investments combined, the position increased to $25 million, up from $3.5 million last year. And that's as the emergency funding flows, donations come in, regular operating money comes in, the money came in, and we see this large increase. Now, when we look at that increase, it's also important to know that there is 6.3 million of that is sitting as outstanding in terms of your accounts payable that had to be paid after year end, and these bills would have now been paid. And also at the end of the year, there was $11 million that was restricted in terms of the grant funding. And we'll talk about what buckets of grant funding were there. So again, we have money that has been restricted. And so if we look at our total financial assets of $24 million and deduct all of our liabilities and obligations we have, we come to net financial assets of 7.2 million. And that is, if we close up everything tomorrow, paid off all of our obligations, what will be left in the bank effectively. That has increased by $5 million year over year. And as I go through the statements, I'll come back to that $5 million increase so that you understand what that increase means, because obviously you are in a unique situation and we want to make sure that you understand what can be spent and not be spent, because that money is meaningful. The other item that I've highlighted in your financial assets, I'll just jump back to, is taxes and utilities receivable. One of the big concerns that we had last year when we did the audit was, would you be able to collect on your taxes receivable given the current state of the village? And, you know, when we did our testing this year, we didn't have concerns over that. We saw that, you know, the citizens were paying. There still are some arrears, but that number is trending downwards, which is what we wanted to see this year. The last item before we move on is tangible capital assets. We did see an increase in your, this is normally your infrastructure and your equipment. And as you know, this is all vehicles and equipment predominantly that was purchased to the end of 2022. I'm going to leave accumulated surplus for now, and we're going to come back to it in the notes so we can understand better what that number means. So we'll park that for now. And as we move to the next page, we have your statement of operations, which shows all of your revenue and expenses for the year as compared to 2021 and to your financial plan. And I've highlighted note 18 because I'm actually going to skip over this page, because really this is a summary, and to understand your true operations, we need to go to the more detailed note in terms of what happened. So we're going to jump all the way down to page 26. And so what this table does is takes that singular column and breaks it out across all of your operational areas. And with your CFO and your manager of finance, we spent a lot of time talking about this when we were reviewing the statements. And the reason why we did is because if we think back, we showed $24 million of revenue, $19 million of expenses, but not a lot of detail on that last page in terms of what's being spent. So it doesn't paint an accurate picture of what's happening. And so this table, which is in all financial statements, maybe not to this level, but this is the level that we always like to see, and in particular for this year, shows you by department what revenues came in and where the money was spent, because it's really important in your case to be able to see the difference between what's regular operations versus the recovery side of things. And so if we look at the context of $25.5 million in revenue, 24.2 million of that was purely recovery funding. That's grants, that's donations, that's insurance proceeds. And so really you only had $1.3 million to deliver civic services and to keep the administration going and pay the staff at the village. And unsurprising, we can see that the bulk of that is in general administrative and legislative services. $1.1 million in revenues and 628, and including all of your taxation revenue there. And then $628,000 of expenses that's being there. So I wanted to highlight that piece just to kind of go, okay, you can see that distinction between recovery versus the rest of your budget. And when we talk about the $5.2 million surplus for the year that was on your statement of operations, we can also see that 4.8 million of that is in your recovery. And so really we're looking at an operating surplus of $350,000, which is there just to, you know, depending on timing, to purchase assets as the recovery continues that aren't funded by it. Very small relative to this 5.2 million. And I also came back to this 5.2 million because understanding that 4.8 was generated out of recovery, and this is an accounting exercise. We're showing a surplus in recovery only because there's money that's been received that we have to recognize as revenue, but we haven't really spent yet. And we know we have to spend it on the recovery. So when we think about that, we have an increase of $5 million in our financial position and an increase of $5 million, or a surplus of $5 million, that recovery and planning piece is the lens we need to look at it, that almost all of it is money that's being earmarked for recovery and planning. So I wanted to spend a bit more time talking about that just to make sure that everyone understood how the surplus flowed this year. And so now I'm going to jump back to, sorry, it's easy for me to jump around because we look at financial statements all the time, but we're going to look at page 19 and your accumulated surplus note. And I want to go from talking about here's where your $5 million surplus is for the year to where your accumulated surplus is. And talk, there's a couple of things to understand there. And the first is we look at that $13.3 million accumulated surplus that I said that I want to park for a moment. What that number represents is what you would, by saying accumulated surplus, that represents all of the net wealth that you have in the community itself in terms of infrastructure and assets, less your liabilities. But when we look at that number, it's made up of three items: $5.5 million in your unrestricted surplus, $6 million in your investment in tangible capital assets, and $1.8 million in reserves. What I'm going to do is I am going to cross out the $6 million in your investment in capital assets. And the reason for that is that number represents, again, an accounting exercise of if we go and track everything that we've spent on our infrastructure and our assets, our equipment, the pipes under the ground, when the buildings are rebuilt, all that sort of thing, less any debt we have on it, that's what that number represents. So while we call it surplus, it's really the equity in your house, so to speak. So it doesn't really mean that it's money that's available to be spent. And so if we back that out, that means that we have, of that 13.3 million, we only have 7.3 million in terms of financial position and cash to spend, which ties back to what we talked about back on page 6. And so that money is split into two buckets. We have our unrestricted surplus of 5.5 million, and we have our reserves. Unrestricted surplus typically means this is money that management has to spend under the approved budget without coming to council. If it's in the approved budget, this is the cash that we have to execute our budget. And so that's, our operating funds. The reserve funds is money that's been set aside by council or by bylaw for specific purposes. And one of our recommendations coming out of the audit is that once the rebuild is well underway, the reserves need to be revisited and rebuilt from scratch, because these are the legacy amounts that are sitting in reserves pre-fire. And so the state of the village pre versus post is going to be significantly different. So that 1.7 million really needs to be revisited and reallocated. It's a problem not for today, it's for tomorrow, because today we have to worry about the rebuild, but we want to make sure that we get that reallocated and have a proper reserve policy going forward for when we're back up and running. Normally, what I would recommend to management on this 5.5 million, though, is that because we know that 5 million of that is specifically recovery money, like we talked about on the previous pages that we went through when we talked about the surplus this year, I would say let's transfer that to reserves so that it's set aside. But because your other reserve funds need to be rebuilt, I didn't feel that it's appropriate to move it there, because right now your operations is recovery mode. So we don't want to be moving it separately. So while we say that we have 5.5 million in unrestricted, we know that notionally $5 million of that is all recovery money that's being spent, and management is tracking on a day-to-day basis. So again, I'm spending a bit more time going through this than I normally would, but I think it's important, given the state you're in, just to understand with the volume of dollars going through and not normal flows of cash through a municipality. I wanted to make sure that we paused on that a bit. The last item that I'm going to be talking about here is just your deferred revenue note. We talked about that there's 10.7 million that's been set aside, that it's funding that's been restricted because of your grants. And I just wanted to highlight on this note, we can see that there was actually $31.9 million received this year. Some of it was receivable from the prior year. Some of it was new funding this year that was received. And of that, $22 million was recognized as revenue. And that's how we get to that ending 10.8 million. And it's based on the accounting rules that we determine whether or not it can be recognized or not based on spending. and those types of things. So just want to highlight that while we say that there was $25 million of revenue this year, actually 32 million flowed into the bank. And then of that, 22 million got recognized in revenue.
2022.
Okay, I'm going to stop my screen share because those were the key items I want to talk about. And I know there's a lot of territory on those financial statements that I covered there. So I wanted to open up for questions that you have. If you've had questions on anything that I didn't touch on the statements, or anything that you wanted to get more clarity on that I spoke about.
Thank you, Mario. There was a lot of information there, and I think there's a lot for myself anyways to digest. Are there any questions from any of the council for Mario this evening? Doesn't look like, oh, Councillor Lightfoot.
Not a question, just a comment. I'd like to say I really appreciate you going into detail about what is normal operation and what is recovery, because as you pointed out, that will be our challenge in the coming years to address those issues. Thank you.
Or is there anyone else?
Well, I have one comment.
Councillor McCann?
I just felt like as we went through it and even reading it in person earlier before the meeting, I had to keep reminding myself that this was 2022 that I was reading about. It was not the year that just ended, and that I had to just kind of keep reminding myself that all these numbers were pertaining to 2022 and not 2023. So
Yeah.
That's a little reminder just for me and anybody else.
Good point. Yeah.
It's old news.
Yeah. Thank you.
That is a good point, and that also means that you aren't going to have a year break from me. Is that we're probably going to be coming back sooner with the 2023 audit as well.
Right. Yeah. That's right.
It'll be easier to understand.
Yeah. I think that's an important piece that maybe we didn't explain at the very beginning, but that is an important piece. So thank you so much, Mario, for the presentation. Oh, Councillor Toss, sorry.
Yeah, I just was curious about the net taxes at 343,000 for 2022. And I'm guessing most of that didn't come from Ponderosa or the village proper. So where did the taxation come from, that amount?
Okay, that is one for the details that I may have to defer to the CFO.
And thank you. I don't have the breakdown right in front of me, but it is, I mean, we do have sort of one institutional taxpayer. We have some commercial, and we do have, there was taxation on all the properties in the village based on their assessment value from BC Assessment. But I think it's probably the one large one that you're thinking about.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, and if I may just share my screen just to show, because there is the obligation, of course, to tax. You don't just collect on behalf of yourself, you collect on behalf of the other taxing authorities. So we can just, this note does show the breakdown that it was 436 collected, 93,000 was on behalf of other authorities as required by the province.
I apologize, I missed that. Thank you.
Good point. Thank you very much, Mario. Okay, we have a recommended motion here. Who would like to make it?
I will
Any volunteers?
make that motion that we accept the, where is it here? We accept the audited financial statements from our partner at BDO Canada LLP.
Thank you. Okay, so thanks so much, Mario, once again.
Do we need a seconder?
So we need a seconder. I got myself lost there.
Yeah.
We need a seconder. Councillor Lightfoot. And if there's no further questions, all those in favor?
Yeah.
Thank you. Carried. All right, public comment. So I'm going to turn it back over to CO Storoshenko.
Thank you, Your Worship. So members of the public are now invited to comment on matters relating to the agenda. If you would like to speak, I ask that you use the raise hand function on Zoom, and you can find that by clicking on the reactions at the bottom of your screen and then click raise hand. When it's your turn, I'll read your name and we'll ask you to unmute yourself. And you'll get a pop-up on your screen asking you to unmute. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. And we ask that you please spell your name, state your address, and the agenda item that you are speaking to. And if anyone would like to speak, please raise your hand now. Don't see anybody. All right, I'll call for a second time. If anyone would like to speak, please use the raise hand function now. All right, still nobody. So calling for a third time. Anybody that wishes to speak, please use the raise hand function. Again, you can find that under reactions at the bottom of your screen. So, Your Worship, I don't have anyone showing. Does anyone there at Parish Hall wish to speak?
Ernie would like.
Yes, Ernie will. So
Ernie would like to speak?
stand over here. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Ernie, what's your last
Gonna
name?
say good evening, Mayor and
You need your
Council.
last name, she needs your last name.
And your address.
Okay, Ernie Wagner.
And your address?
Give your Lytton address.
Like 47 Fraser Street. It's kind of empty right now. But
Thank you.
anyway, I want to speak about 50% cut on building permit. Now, there is a couple that all they've done is bought a property and moved across the street. So I think everybody would be in favor of them receiving that, which they weren't at first. But one thing I'd like to add is to get more people getting their permit faster is the ones that have bought property here and might be just sitting on it, for them to get the building permit quickly by June 30th. So to offer them the cut also. Okay, that's all.
Thank you, Ernie.
All right.
Okay.
Anybody else?
There's nobody else in the hall
Okay.
here.
All right. So thank you. That completes the public comment portion of the meeting. Back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 8 on the agenda, which is our staff reports and presentations. And CO Monbercat, if you would like to speak to 8.1.1 Building Permit Fee Reduction Program.
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. This is just a bit of a housekeeping item. A couple of meetings ago, council passed a resolution to reduce the building permit fees for residents rebuilding on their property that they owned on June the 30th, 2021, the reduction of 50%. Since that time, we've had one instance come up of an owner from June 30th, 2021, who ended up buying a new property and is rebuilding their house on a new property because their old property wouldn't fit the house they wanted to build. So the recommended resolution here is just to approve that owner receive the benefit of the former decision of the 50% reduction in the building permit fees.
Thank you. We have a recommended motion. Councillor Lightfoot.
I'll move that council approve the building permit fees paid by Michelle Swan for 273 Fifth Street be reduced by 50% as they were full-time Lytton residents on June the 30th, 2021.
And a seconder.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor McCann. And are there any comments or questions? No, seeing none. All those in favor?
Hi.
Carried. Now, CFO Monbercat, I may have mixed these up a little bit, but if you'd like to speak to number 2 of 8.1.2.
I don't really have anything to say on that.
Yeah. Okay, so nothing further. So we had the presentation and we have made the motion to accept those. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have a recovery manager, item number 8.3. No, 8.3. Do we have Dawn or Mike?
Dawn's with us tonight.
Dawn's on tonight. Okay.
Hi, all. Would it be possible to put the presentation on screen? I'm hoping somebody can do it, not me, because I'm incapable.
There it is.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Just wanted to, this will be brief. You'll see that we are going full shift to rebuild now. I think it's time that while there's still a lot of recovery efforts going on to replace what was there, we should really take a minute and say it's time to really focus on moving forward and rebuilding. Next slide, please. So when we started in April 2023, this was kind of what it looked like. There was still blue fencing up, which I know is everybody's favorite thing in the world. Signs saying keep out. This is a toxic site or whatnot. Next slide, please. So in December 2023, I know folks have already seen these pictures before. We had finished the backfill of zones 1 to 6 throughout the village, and the first residential build began. Next slide, please. This is just more images from the rebuild of the first home. Next slide, please. There's one more of it. Just to give you a general idea from a high level, sites are ready to go. So this is the final slide. This is 2024, and I think, as like I say, we have shifted rebuild, and the whole idea now is how we can build back together. The question is how many residential homes will be coming back. I know, as Ernie mentioned, to get more folks in the building permit stage. There are a number of builders that are working in and around the village, and there'll be a number of builds coming back this spring. And same with businesses to come forward with their building permits. I know one has been submitted. I'm hoping for much more this spring, and for folks to start again. And we're hoping by the end of this month or beginning next, we'll be able to come forward to community, talk about the number of community spaces that will be coming back. That's all. Thank you. If anybody has any questions, just please always contact us at recoverymanager@lytton.ca. Same as when we first started, our service level agreement to the community is try and get back to you within 24 hours. We might not always have the right answer or a full answer, but we will do our best to always get back to you, and we're going to stay committed to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. You know, I realized that our last council meeting was the middle of December, and we had the Christmas holiday, and we expected a really long report with lots being done, but we will put a motion forward here to accept this verbal report. Thank you. So who would like to make that motion?
I'll do that. I'll move that council receive verbal report from the recovery manager update for information.
Great, and a seconder. Councillor Toss. And are there any questions or comments for Don?
No.
Doesn't look like it. So all those in favor? Yeah. And carried. Thank you, Don.
Sure.
All right. I guess you're going to carry on with item number 8.3.2, which is power poles, temporary power poles for rebuild.
Yeah, to segue from what we were talking about building back together, part of what we've been working on is trying to provide the simplest way that we can to help residents and businesses come back. As part of that, all residents and all businesses coming back for building are obviously going to require temporary power as part of the builds. To help support that, the village has bought 12 temporary power poles from Stellar Jones. We'd like to install these power poles around the village so builders and for the residents and businesses coming back can access that and share the cost of that install. So for context, the pole, the installation, power usage are separate, obviously. we're estimating about $1,000. The total cost would be close to $7,000 for each build. Our belief is that if we put these power poles in where we've already been told where building permits have been submitted, those residents and businesses can share access to it, and we can share the expense as multiple homes get built. So for example, instead of one person building putting in a power pole at $7,000, we hopefully can share that with 2 homes, so that'd be $3,500 or even more. And we'll calculate that out. And the whole idea is we want to be fair to all the residents building back, and so we're doing this as a community-wide effort.
Thank you, Don. We have a motion to put forward, and that will be who?
I'll move that council, go ahead.
Yeah, Jen, Councillor Toss, go ahead.
Thanks. I move that council approve the Village of Lytton, that the Village of Lytton provides temporary power infrastructure by installing poles to be used by property owners in the rebuild process.
A seconder,
I'll second that.
Councillor McCann. Now, are there any comments or questions for Don?
Yeah.
Councillor McCann.
First of all, I'll paraphrase what Ernie's question was, because we spoke about it earlier. So if there were a number of people using the same pole and sharing the cost of that pole, how do you know that your share of the usage is going to you? Like, can you envision? I can't envision putting like 5 meters on a pole. So can you help me understand how that would go?
Just on a high level, like our what we talked about is just making it fair for everyone. So taking the grand total and just dividing it up.
Oh, okay.
Right.
All right.
Yeah. Realistically, there'll be some folks, charging their iPhones or Android phones too, or whatever phones they have, and who knows what else will go on. But I think the power is going to be minimum relative to the cost of the installation.
Yeah, okay. My other issue is when I looked at the map, I was concerned that it looked like maybe it's just a random map and it's going to change, but I really wouldn't want to see the power going across Main Street for this. Like, I can't imagine. So for example, if there was a pole on the east side or the west side of Main, and the building that wanted to use it was on the west side of Main, I don't think that's a really good way to do that, right? You wouldn't want these things going across the street if you can avoid it. So that would be my only issue with the map, is making sure that those poles are really strategically placed. And if you don't know yet, then don't put it in yet. That'd be my advice, because I wouldn't want to have to deal with that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And there needs to be a certain level of clearance for the trucks and stuff that come by for deliveries or whatnot, or for building. I know some folks are doing modular prefab, so that has to be taken into account. The map is more of a general idea, and it's based on where we've gotten information from builders to saying they want to build here or there. But the final location we're gonna set out based on those conditions.
Thank you. Councillor Lightfoot.
Actually, I think Councillor Toss was before me, but
Okay. Yeah. Councillor Toss. Sorry.
No problem. Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. I don't know if that was exactly what Councillor McCann was getting at, but the logistics around sharing of the poles and where they're located, both the locations on Main Street and just how much these would be used. And that's my first concern. The other, I'm actually speaking against this motion for a couple of reasons. The other being the cost of almost $7,000 a pole times 12 is $82,000 and change. And without factoring in the archaeology, which AEW looks like there, could be as much as $4,000 a pole. At 12 poles is another almost 50,000, which makes us come in at 131,000 to potentially help some residents. I don't feel that's money well spent. I feel like the archaeology costs alone, if we could cover those for residents for their own pole installations and make temporary poles available to them at cost, that would make much more sense to me. And giving the autonomy to the residents, and that $4,000 that could potentially cost per pole for archaeology could go to the residents to put in their own pole. I'm going to speak against this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Lightfoot?
I too speak against this motion. I don't understand it. I'm trying to envision extension cords all over the place, and to me, it's a workplace hazard. I've talked to 2 people that intend to rebuild. One said they couldn't figure out how it would help anyone. They said they would still need a temporary pole on each lot to hold the mast in the box until the house is built. The other person was, well, if it saved me money, I could go for it, but I'm not really sure. I need to talk to my contractor. So I think if anything, this motion is premature. But I would rather see the time and the energy be directed towards other more beneficial things. I think this is a bit of a rabbit hole. So I'll speak against it. Thank you.
I have a question for Dawn. So Dawn, when you put this together, you spoke with builders, is that
Yes.
correct? And what was their sense and their feeling about sharing the poles?
They didn't have a problem with it, to be honest. Like I say, there's a number of things we're going to try and bring forward to make it easier for residents as a whole that we can do for the village collectively. And this was just one of them. And they were all in favor of it. To comment as well, or to answer one of Councillor Tosser's questions, we would only put in one work plan for all 12 poles instead of 12 different work plans. So that's the savings to the village as a whole. We would have to get monitors, obviously, as putting the poles in, but we believe that can be done in one day. So it would be a significant savings on the ARC side. So instead of 12 work plans, 12 different monitors, it would be one work plan, probably with a couple monitors.
Thank you for that. Councillor Lightfoot?
I guess I just need to understand the process more. So if these poles went in, would they be the service pole for a permanent building in the long run, or would they have to be removed? There's just a lot of questions I have about the process. Do you know, would they stay there forever? Once these poles are established in those suggested locations, are they there forever?
No, they're temporary poles just for rebuilding. They will be removed once the buildings are up, and then BC Hydros put transformers in for residents to connect directly in for the permanent services. And we've confirmed that there will be no charge to the residents for that reconnection fee.
Yeah. So is it similar to a farm service pole? I know several people that have put in what they call farm service, which is basically a pole. I thought it had a transformer on it. I could be wrong. That services a barn or livestock buildings, whatever. Is it similar to what we're talking about here?
I actually can't answer that because I'm a city boy, so I don't know what a farm service pole actually is. But I can the way it looks is really, you put the pole in, there is essentially a box with charging capacity, right? And different breakers as a breaker box. That box is connected up to the actual power lines itself, so you can draw down and access it for build. We just think that it's a simpler solution than everybody bringing in generators that are loud and whatnot.
Generators can be pretty small and efficient and only be used when needed. I know one of our previous meetings, one of the counselors suggested that construction happens everywhere where there's not power, and cited, White Rock and other locations. So I need to be convinced at this point. Unfortunately, I don't believe I can support the motion.
Councillor Toss.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm continuing not to support this. The one work plan for all 12 pools doesn't sit well with me because work plans are site specific. And if that were the case, we could use one work plan for every property as well. So with those logistics, or with that logic, we could use that money to subsidize residents for that same work using the work plan developed by the village. And even though generators may not be ideal, it would still be the choice of the contractor and property owner to use a generator or to erect a temporary pole. I am in favor of supporting residents with erecting poles on their property through perhaps subsidizing the archaeology and maybe even subsidizing the pole, like giving it to them at cost. But I'm not in favor of this motion. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions? So I will call the questions. All in favor of this motion? Two.
Where's Melissa?
Is Melissa on?
Hi, I'm in favor of the motion.
Great, thank you. And I guess that would be carried.
Opposed, yeah.
Oh, do I call for opposed?
Yeah.
Those opposed would be, yeah, sorry. Those opposed, Councillor Toss, Councillor Lightfoot, okay. And carried.
Okay.
Okay.
Councillor Lightfoot.
Do you have a comment, Councillor Lightfoot?
I would just like to ask that my nay be recorded in the minutes.
Yes. Yeah, okay, thank you. Perfect. Okay, thank you very much. That will move us on to item number 8.4, Director of Development. And do we have Berta? Is that who I see on tonight? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
To talk about the new provincial legislation and regulations.
Yes. Good evening,
Cheers.
Councillor and Mayor. Happy New Year to all of you. I'm just going to share my PowerPoint presentation here. I am a bit croaky, so if you don't understand me for some reason, please just let me know. And just let's get this going. There we go. Okay. So tonight, as indicated, just bear with me a moment. I just gotta get my computer organized. There we go. Tonight, as indicated, I'm talking about the new provincial changes to legislation and regulations. If you recall, when we started working with you a year ago, we would always talk about using the planner toolbox. And we'd always talk about using the right tools, understanding the 5 W's, and always trying to be very clear and simple in our communication. Well, tonight what we're dealing with is we're dealing with a legislative framework. And what's happening today is it's going straight from the province, straight to the village of Lytton. So the intent the province has with these regulations is to deliver more homes for people fast in every part of British Columbia. This is, in fact, the biggest changes to planning, so my area of expertise, since 1985. So it's big, big, big in our world. So tonight's objective are to overview the policy changes, to provide some requirements specific to the Lytton context, and of course, answer any questions I can. It is interesting, although there are a number of documents that have been rolled out, there are webinars and all types of things happening right now to teach municipal planning staff how to implement this. In fact, today there was a 2-hour webinar earlier today. So let's get on to what was talked about. So in our report, we referenced the 5 bills that were passed by the government mid-December. It was December 11th. And those got translated into 3 manuals. The manuals are a short-term rental manual, small-scale multiple unit housing, and transit-oriented areas. So we're going to start with short-term rental. The aim here is to increase long-term rental housing by reducing short-term rental housing. The intention is that they expect that short-term rental housing would then turn over to long-term rental housing and provide more housing for people. It has a number of different factors that are going on. One of the things that the province did suggest is that they could limit short-term rentals to the host's principal residence plus one secondary suite or accessory dwelling unit. We're going to talk about those accessory dwelling units in just a few moments. They would like to end non-conforming uses. So if you do recall, I think we've talked about this before, in the Local Government Act, there is something that if your use was conforming before a certain time, you can pull back and be non-conforming. However, they have removed that condition for short-term rentals. They are expecting some platform accountability. So in other words, they're expecting that Airbnb reports back to the provincial government, and they're expecting that business licenses are issued for any short-term rental, which would then be noted on the Airbnb or whatever platform our short-term rental accommodator would do. They'd also be looking at data sharing through the province, as well as supporting municipalities in moving forward with short-term rentals. So in the local context, Lytton does not have any provisions for short-term rentals. When I looked at the Airbnb listings for Lytton, there was none listed. So in the future, the village may wish to consider implementing some short-term accommodation regulations to support both the villagers and tourism. The next one is the small-scale multiple housing. Sorry, it just looks really funny on my screen here. So the aim is to provide more housing for people by densifying neighborhoods. There are a number of different ways that the province has set forward to do that. So we've all heard that they're talking 2 to 6 units, depending on certain conditions. So the first question is the lot within an urban containment boundary? Lytton does not have an urban containment boundary because Lytton, although it is a village, we don't really have a Lytton area, and it's not, urban area, and it's not big enough to have to contain it in some manner. The other main question is the lot serviced by government, water, or sewage systems? That's very important. And the one that I know we've talked about briefly in the past is the lot larger than 280 square meters, which works out to about 314 square feet, which would accommodate 4 units. Under 280 square meters would accommodate 3 units. And if it meets some transit service area definitions, it would be 6 units. I just need to wet my whistle here for guys. That's better already. Okay, moving on to next. There's some more details that we do need to be aware of in the Lytton context. The most important is the details above apply only to each parcel of land in a municipality with a population greater than 5,000. What the province does expect, however, is that smaller communities like Lytton allow for secondary suites and accessory dwelling units. And in the report in front of you, I went into some of the details on accessory dwelling units. In many jurisdictions that have had them for many years, we call them garden suites or carriage houses. And it's basically a unit in the back or the front, in some cases, of a property that allows another family to live in it. So Lytton has already included secondary suites in their zoning bylaw. We did that in November when we made all those changes. And in the future, Lytton might wish to consider adding accessory dwelling units to their repertoire. Some of the other details. Obviously, there's infrastructure upgrades that are needed to allow infill density. Now, I'm going with the documents, and the documents, of course, speak to places like Vancouver with, lots and lots of people, and Lytton, that's, doesn't have a lot of people even at the best of times. But we just need to go through all these pieces. So the government then went forward and said, well, you know what, let's change some of the things so that local government can recoup some costs. So funding of upgrades can be done through DCCs, development cost charges. Lytton does not have a DCC bylaw, but if you were to ever want a DCC bylaw, originally before these changes, you could charge for capital costs such as water, sewer, drainage, parks, and roads to new development. The way I always put it to people is it's that bank accountless guy that pays for things that we all get to enjoy together. So larger centers that would include a sewage treatment plant, those kind of things. The changes that the provincial government has put forth would allow DCCs to help pay for things like fire protection facilities, police facilities, and solid waste and recycling. They started it. Oh, sorry, whistling again here. They implemented another one to assist municipalities with some of the costs of having denser areas, and that's the amenity cost charges. They are a new funding tool that helps local government pay for amenities to support a livable community. Imagine things like a library, those types of things would be what they consider a livable community. And the way the funding model works is there would be a portion that is from the local government, a portion that would be from the provincial government, and a portion that would come from the developer. So the other thing that I wanted to point out to you, and I had pointed out in the report, is there are exemptions. So there are certain cases that the provincial government realized that people are in a situation where an exemption might be the best way to move forward. So Lytton does hit a couple of those things. So there is an opportunity to do an exemption that would not require you to move forward for these things for 5 years. In terms of the zoning changes, I don't see them as insurmountable, but there are a few other things that this might come in handy. Official community plan. I know we've all talked about the official community plan a lot, and we know that this is something that's on the radar for Lytton as well. So the province has changed some of their requirements here as well. They now require that everyone does a housing needs assessment. And you've noticed in planning, everything gets shortened to letters, and it's very confusing sometimes even for us. But the housing needs assessment is required by all municipalities now using a standardized formula every 5 years. And originally they would have to do it, one would do it for 5 years. Now they want a 20-year window. So it is something that definitely needs to be on the radar for Lytton, that is coming up in the future. The other thing here is, and I'm sorry, just bear with me a second. There we go. Any residential zoning applications that are consistent with the official community plan no longer can be sent to a public hearing. So I know in Lytton, since we've been here, we've never had to deal with this. And I'm not sure in the past how often Lytton has, but if I were to take a property and wanted to rezone it, as long as it's for residential and consistent with the OCP, there is no longer a public hearing as part of the process. It is expected that the vision of the OCP reflects the community, and that's where the province is trying to push the emphasis from being at public hearings. And I mean, we've all read about them in different places and the things that can happen in public hearing, to the OCP, and the OCP being the vision of the community. So the other thing that is now legislated is the official community plan needs to be updated every 5 years, and the zoning bylaw needs to be changed to ensure that it meets the vision of the OCP. So again, as you can imagine, there is an impetus to put housing for people. So it's imagined that more people are coming into communities. The OCP needs to be upgraded to allow those communities to grow, and that zoning changes would happen. Okay. Considerations for the future. We were thinking about this, and we thought perhaps the downtown area could be defined as an area where Lytton in the future would like to see some small scale multiple housing units, and that can be established. Now, the reality is you already have the C1 zone that allows for some apartment housing and things like that, but you might want to define it, and that would be something through your OCP process. I'm going to go into this one. You're going to ask me why in a minute. So the province has also chosen specific transit interchanges as transit-oriented areas, TOAs, another acronym, within BC. And I found it really fascinating when I read through all those manuals that I gave you the links to. This particular one had all the DCC and ACC information in it, which really didn't seem that it should be there, but I almost think they almost forgot it in the other one. Anyways, moving on, they were defined, the transit-oriented areas were defined in the document and mapping, which is available on the province website. There's 52 of them in BC at this point. So what's interesting there is a minimum building height and density has been set for properties within 200 and 400 meters of a transit-oriented area. Local government may not restrict development in those areas below those numbers, below that minimum set, which is really going to be quite interesting in some jurisdictions. Local government is prohibited also in this area to establish off-street transit residential parking for these areas. I know this is something we've talked about in our parking work that we're working on at this point, but originally it looked like we could do that, but that the province would no longer require us to do off-street parking for residential in all areas, but they have defined it just to the transit-oriented areas, and that's why I wanted to bring it to your attention. No surprise, Lytton has not been identified for a transit-oriented area. So there's a couple of dates to remember. A lot of these things have a deadline on them. So the first deadline is June 2024. Any changes to the zoning bylaw to increase density must be in place. So again, in Lytton, the low-hanging fruit at this point might be to add the accessory dwelling units. If you want an exemption, i.e. don't want to move forward with some of the housing assessments and things like that, that could be applied for. But that application needs to be in also by June 2024. And the ministry, it's through a letter through the Ministry of Housing. Excuse me, December 2025 is when they expect any land use changes to facilitate additional density to be reflected in the OCP. And again, what we're proposing or what we're suggesting that could be something that council would consider is already something that the OCP in Lytton recognizes. Finally, by December 2028, housing needs assessments must be prepared, and then it's imagined that the OCP would follow directly out of that. That is my very short summary, probably about 200 or 300 pages of documentation. I'm open for any questions.
You did well summarizing all those documents. Thank you. Are there any questions for Bertie?
I had one.
Councillor
I
McCann.
gotta find it though. Hi, Bertie. I hope you feel better soon. That sounds really annoying to have to deal with your situation, your health situation. I was reading Ravi Kalan's letter to the council here, and he's referred to some of the things you were talking about, and I just wanted to check in with you about that. So I heard you say that something about the 51 million in funding to support planning and capacity. And did you say that we are not eligible for any of that?
Thank you for the question, Your Worship. At this point, I don't know if we are eligible. In the webinar that I was in today, I was told that the municipalities would be receiving letters, and that letter would indicate what your portion would be. So the letter that's attached to council or to the council agenda today is dated December 8th. All these legislations were passed December 11th, and then these documents all came out just before Christmas. So that was our happy Christmas reading. But you know, that's when that kind of happens. It's all happening so fast that we almost need to kind of look at what came first. So like I said, the seminar that I was in today indicated that municipalities, the village, would get a letter saying we have this much earmarked. I have not seen anything yet that says you have to apply for it. And if I do, I'll make the CAO aware of it ASAP.
Yeah, thank you.
I can just confirm that we have received the letter, just so you know, we have received the letter notifying us of the funding. There's no application process required.
That's fine. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Toss.
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. Something that's just a question, I guess, around the infrastructure needs again. And just wondering, has there been any assessment on how many residents or how much water and sewer capacity we have as we look at densifying? Because I think densification is a great idea, but if we don't have the sewer and water to support it, then it's a moot point. So I'm wondering if that has sort of in the works, or do we have any data on that as we move forward?
I'll pass that question to the CAO because I know there is something and she knows about it.
Yeah, and I do think getting kind of firm numbers on that firm information is part of our process of with our capital reinvestment plan that we're just about to start as we're planning the upgrades for the water and sewer system.
Excellent. And then just a comment, the accessory dwelling units and the OCP would be something I'd very much like to see on the table in the future, near future. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? No, so we have a motion to put on the floor here to receive this report for information.
I'll do that.
Councillor McCann?
I will move that council receive the report of the CAO Acting Director of Development titled New Provincial Legislation and Regulations for Information.
Seconder?
Seconded, Toss?
Thank you. All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes, and carried. Thank you so much, Berta, for that presentation. And we'll move on now to item 8.5, which is Public Works. And I'm not sure who's going to be reporting this.
Me.
You are. Thank you, Brian.
PowerPoint.
Oh, there it is. Okay, good. Kathy, can you slide just off to the side a bit?
So the first topic being waterworks, what we've kind of accomplished or been doing over the last several months for ending off 2023. As of January 16th, we'll be commissioning the new backup generator that's been installed at the water treatment plant. We've also received a mobile backup generator for well number 2. So both of those are in place, and like I say, will be operational after January 17th. You can go on to the next slide. We're doing a major infrastructure upgrade repair that was addressing some major leaks that we had in our water system on First Street. Unfortunately, due to the cold weather, we'll be delayed in completing that. We'll have to wait until we get some above freezing temperatures, but I would say we're at 75 to 80% complete right now. We'll do every effort to try and make it a smooth road surface until such time as we can, get blacktop back in place. So we'll appreciate people's patience in slowing down and just trying to deal with the fact that it is a rough surface. So next slide. Again, First and River Road. We've installed some new services, moved them from the narrow laneway that was along Main Street at the front, and now they're going down River Road. We've upgraded the service line that was servicing those properties from an 1.5-inch galvanized leaking pipe to a 6-inch new quality pipe. And the services are coming off of that. We have a 2-inch hydrant that's kind of being used as a blow off, as well as potentially, fire fighting possibilities in that area. As they're doing the water repairs, they are extending the sewer lines that they're finding to try to get them to property line, where we will be installing inspection boxes, and hopefully residents can just connect to them and when they're doing their construction. That's the 2-inch fire hydrant.
Oh, okay.
Or
Excellent.
standpipe that we have installed at the top of River Road. We've put in some old guardrail just to try and protect it. We're hoping to do a little bit more improvements, obviously, as we complete that project. The other issues that are occurring with our water system is we are still currently on a do not consume order downtown. These repairs will assist in removing that. And I'm hoping to have that done by the end of February or sooner. Well 3, with the assistance and cooperation of Lytton First Nations, is online and operational now. But we are currently on the creek, so we're not using it, but in the event that we needed it, it is fully operational. We're still working on trying to clean up some of the damage from the 2021 atmospheric river up at the intake. But again, we're moving along with those repairs, hopefully before next spring's freshet. Wastewater treatment is the other infrastructure that we're working on. The plant is operational. We're testing daily and monthly to meet compliance, which we appear to be doing okay. We're doing some repairs as needed. Still looking for some contractors to complete some electrical repairs that we need. The staff have received their confined space training, so we're able to do some of those repairs that we weren't able to do. We still need to purchase some equipment that was lost in the fire, but slowly we'll get that done. McRae Environmental Services was hired to do a sewer inspection and cleaning, but again, due to the cold weather, that won't be possible, and we'll have to wait for a warming trend and relook at that, depending on when that comes. Just some pictures of some of the cut and cap locations and equipment or supplies that we still have around that we're hoping to use up rather than just having them sit around. They're not the easiest thing to move. Still trying to price out the actual tools and equipment that can move these things easier, and they're not cheap. Next slide. Parks. We have a few parks. This one I thought was an interesting picture. O'Dwyer Park. We did some fuel management work or grubbing or cleaning up of fire hazards around the park, and you can see it's a significant difference.
Holy cow.
So again, as time permits, hopefully we can get more done prior to spring so that we can see some stuff growing. This is just an example of the duff and vegetation that was removed from the majority of properties during the backfill. We've installed some new signs, which were donated by a sign company quite some time ago. Some of them aren't maybe as straight as they should be, but we'll continue working on securing them in the ground a little better. There is some tripping hazards, obviously, throughout the village that people will have to be made aware of, and we'll do everything we can to try put gravel or something to take away the pothole aspect of it, but people just have to be careful right now. Fire and rescue. We've got a few projects going on there. So the picture to the left is the third or fourth attempt at putting out an underground fire up at the CP rail. I haven't seen smoke lately, but I have been told by CP Rail that if it comes again, they will put a bigger effort into making sure that it goes out. The picture on the right is for discussion. Some people may have heard or wondered why we've got our fire trucks parked outside. We don't have a place that we can put them. So the suggestion and what will be coming to council and for the community to think of is a temporary fire hall at the old Aston Planers mill site. That's the picture that we're looking at right here. We've got a few ideas as to how we can make this work in the interim before a new fire hall is built. Cost estimate will be brought forward maybe as soon as the next council meeting to discuss. We're looking at some possible new fire hall locations, one being next to the cemetery site. There will be some preliminary geotech work done over the next week or so to see if that's viable. Both the old engine and the new engine are fully certified and operational right now. And we are doing quite a bit of equipment replacement and training as we can get it going here over the next few months. Roadways, everybody knows they're a little rough. I mentioned it earlier. We're doing our best to try to keep them smooth. You can carry on to the next slide. Drainage and snow removal is an ongoing activity that we're doing daily. People see something or have some concerns, please bring it to our attention and we will do our best to try and address them. There will be a one-day full closure at the bottom of the hill, First Street, when we do the tie-in to Main Street. There just isn't enough room with the hill to allow for single lane traffic to do that tie-in. So again, with the cooperation of Lytton First Nations, we're going to be allowed to have temporary access through IR18 for that day. I'll notify people through Facebook, website, however we possibly can get the message out. There will be traffic control up at the highway redirecting people when that occurs. I believe that's about it.
Well, that's an intriguing picture.
If there's any questions,
Yeah.
feel free to ask.
So do we have any questions for Brian?
Where was that last photo taken of the broken the photo?
washed out culvert.
It's actually down at the Rip Raft takeout.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Lightfoot? No, I thought I saw your hand. No. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Great. So we have a motion to put forward for accepting his report. And
I'll move that council receive the verbal report, Public Works update for information.
Great. And a seconder? Councillor Lightfoot. And all those in favor?
Yes.
Carried. Now, item number 8.6 is fire rescue, and we have our two fire captains here today. So I will turn it over to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So just wanted to give you guys a bit of background as to kind of where we're at right now, the things we've been up to. So starting off, we've been making progress in reestablishing a complete fire service since the loss of it in 2021. Able to recruit, train, and support our volunteer firefighters. The department's also been focusing on building the roster of firefighters, replacing the lost equipment that was damaged or destroyed during the fire, establishing appropriate training standards, and servicing the fire trucks to keep them in good working order, which Brian has talked on in the previous slide there. So right now we have a complement of about 15 volunteer firefighters, and we have 3 probationary firefighters with us right now who just came on. Those guys right there are still waiting final documents to be put forward to you guys for approval, but it is in the works. Currently, the department's led by a committee, a leadership committee consisting of 2 officers, Dion Moody and myself, as well as Kathy Hibberson, who's our administrative assistant. Overall, the fire department's overseen by Brian Baxter here, and then us as a leadership committee report up to him, and so forth. So far, the fire department has welcomed a total of 5 new recruits since last year, which has been a huge upward trend as to where we were.
I believe they're all under the age of 25, and we've never had that in Lytton Fire Rescue.
Wow, that's great.
So that is some crazy potential and something very exciting.
Well
Yeah.
done.
That's
Yeah.
a
Strong
idea.
class coming in, so
Good.
it's looking good. Yeah, so kind of on to the training piece here. With the influx of new workers, we have to start them with training and appropriate standards to make sure that they're safe and we can provide a proper service to the community. And that was identified as one of the major concerns over the years. We haven't really adopted a certifiable training standard.
Yeah.
So with that, we move forward with enrolling people in certifiable training, that being the NFPA 1001 firefighter level 1 and 2 training, which is nationally recognized, internationally recognized, and it's pro board certified. The goal of this training mainly is set out by the Office of the Fire Commissioner of BC, and it's kind of a standard that needs to be adopted by fire departments. And the minimum level is exterior fire operations, which we're striving to right now. Currently, we do have 6 members enrolled in that training. the core group, people that are here year-round and respond most to calls, and more can slot it in shortly as we get approval. Onto the equipment piece. Again, we've been in a steady process of replacing damaged equipment stuff. With our vehicles being exposed to the elements and all that, we do have the issue of hose rot and stuff taking the toll on that. So we're addressing as we can and restoring inside where we can. But with that, we also did have donations in 2021 and 2022 for out of service gear from municipal departments down on the coast that we've been using to outfit our members. So with that, we received 20 sets of donated structural turnout gear, which currently all of our members are using. With that though, it is outdated. It's condemned by their department, but for us, it's serving a purpose for now as baseline protection. But a pretty cool thing is we were just able to order 6 brand new sets of gear for our core members again, and then hopefully more down the road as well. In addition to the 6 sets of gear, we've also ordered 6 pairs of structural fire gloves, 10 pairs of automotive extrication gloves, and 15 structural fire helmets, which we've already received and put into service. Countless lengths of fire hose have also been donated or purchased with grant money over the past couple of years, allowing the frontline engine, our nice brand new shiny red truck, to be fully stocked and maintain a reserve supply of hose in case some gets damaged or dirty. We have identified that more small attack hose is a requirement to purchase in the coming bit here, just as we don't have a surplus of that, and cleaning and drying kind of takes a toll on us. A cool new piece of Department 2 is we've started to implement a uniform standard for members when filling the role of firefighter for the Village of Lytton, whether on emergency calls or providing public education or community events and all that. In that, we've ordered 50 uniform shirt patches, 10 uniform shirt sweaters. We've also received those at this time. And then using a previous donation of uniform shirts, we've been able to supply those to members, and some members have actually been able to attach the patches to their shirt, therefore having a complete uniform. We made the decision to implement this policy in the department just to convey a sense of professionalism with the department. Instead of arriving in a Carhartt hoodie and jeans, we have a bit more of a presence that way. As well, providing our members protection from any liquids or solids that are found when working on an emergency scene. And it also gives our members a sense of pride when wearing the uniform. 2 other pieces of equipment that we did order in 2023 is a 185-pound rescue mannequin for training purposes, allowing members to train as if in a real-world scenario with realistic weight and body configurations. It's quite the heap of weightless or dead weight that we have to carry on, but it's a nice training prop for sure. And the final piece of equipment that we ordered was first for the department, but it was a thermal imaging camera, which will be placed into service on the frontline engine once it arrives. With that, this tool will allow us to search and locate people in blackout situations, whether it's a structure fire or dark at night, as well as identify heat during structure fires, underground fires, like we have the consistent one here, and any down power lines that we don't know if are energized or not. We'll be able to confirm that with this thermal imaging camera. It will also assist with locating patients that have been ejected from vehicles during crashes and adverse weather conditions, which we do respond to a fair bit out here. And then just a brief summary kind of on our vehicles currently that we're operating. So our engine 1, our frontline fire truck there, it's a 2021 Freightliner we received in February 2022. Carries about 1,000 imperial gallons of water, 30 gallons of Class A fire foam, and 2 ladders, 800 feet of small attack hose, 700 feet of supply hose, and all of our medical first responder gear. Our engine 2, which was our old frontline engine, now pushed into a secondary role, is a 1998 Freightliner, and it serves kind of as our temporary rescue truck until we can get our hands on something more applicable for that role. With that, it carries all of our automotive extrication gear, our hydraulic cutters, spreaders, stuff like that. Has some fire hose on it too, in case we do have to suppress any vehicle fires or have any wildland fires. It also carries some medical first responder supplies, traffic warning devices, and some basic hand tools. Other than that, the last piece I do want to talk about is kind of the wildfire season prep for us and kind of future opportunities out there. Last year during the 2023 fires, we were able to deploy our engine to our neighbors to the south on the Cookpee Creek fire. And with that, we gained a whole kind of other sense of the world, and we can provide a service to the province and as well as other communities in the region here. With that, we would like to pitch the idea at some point in time to enroll our members into training for the provincial standard of wildland firefighting, and start to move in that direction as to be prepared for our local community, but also have availability to send our assets, given that there's more in Lytton to respond here, but out to other communities to help protect them too.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments for Kyle or Dion here? Councillor Lightfoot.
First of all, thank you for volunteering and raising the numbers within the organization. It's something we all appreciate. Never underestimate how much we do. I have a specific question, and I think it's okay to ask it here. So yesterday, road conditions were terrible, and I saw that there was a response from the fire department out towards Shaw Springs. I'm just wondering, in those cases, was that engine 2 or engine 1 that you took out? And I guess I'll let you answer that question first.
Yeah, absolutely. So in yesterday's response, we did utilize engine 1. We did leave engine 2 here, and the reason being, we do provide road rescue services through EMCR throughout the part of the canyon here up to Spence's Bridge, halfway up Highway 12 into Jackass Mountain. We do find that in the colder conditions, given that we only have space at the BC Wildfire Base to store 1 apparatus inside, and we do carry water in our engine 1 there for fires, right? So we keep that one inside so it's nice and heated. We're finding that with our engine 2, the older truck, it's struggling to start in cold conditions, even when plugged in with a block here. So we made the judgment call to leave that truck in service here, where we could potentially get it going for anything in the town, then respond out with engine 1 there.
That was in part my, I mean, rules have changed over the years, and it used to be that to go outside of our area, you had to get an approval from the mayor. So I know that that's changed for sure, but there's always I'm wondering how you gauge response. Say there was a fire at 2 or 3 Mile or up in Ponderosa Heights. I'm assuming it because you're intelligent, capable young men. I'm assuming that you have some criteria on how many you leave back and what the secondary force is if a second emergency arises. I know in the past it was very difficult to make sure there was enough left behind. Are you able to assure that you have a second response group ready most times?
Absolutely. So again, with the influx of new members too, bringing it up to hopefully about 15 shortly once approved, we do have that reserve in town available to respond.
Great.
At any given time, the max that we can send out on a frontline truck is 5 people. And typically what we do is we just send it out with 4 if we can stock it that way. So we're leaving, 11 or so behind to kind of look after the town is what we're going for.
Good. Thank you. Good. Okay. Are there any other comments or questions? No, I did. Councillor McCann?
So, so you got a wish list, and your wish list includes training, and it also includes equipment. And what's the process for that? Like, do you bring that to the CAO and lobby for money and hope that you get smiled upon and somebody gets saying, oh, these guys are great, it's a whole bunch of money, and then they come to council and say, this is what the guys want? Is that the process that's going to happen here?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the timeline on that process?
You should be seeing more wish lists probably within the next month.
There you go.
We've talked about setting a meeting just so we can get the prioritization and the need, and then presenting that with Brian probably.
I'll continue.
Yeah, Councillor.
One of the things that the council wants to do is have a councillor responsible for and interacting with the fire department as part of our council responsibilities. And so how do you best see us meeting that? There you go. There's a real question.
For example, do you have regular meetings that a council member could
Fire
attend?
practice is still the same time, Thursday at 7. That has not changed.
Yeah.
We do bounce it around when we do some educational things. We go down to the village office down at the Aspen Planers, or we do it at the forestry base where you guys see your trucks. Council, mayor have an open invite to stop in and say hi. There's, it's your fire department.
Yeah.
Yeah. So never be afraid to come and say hi. Brian is with us at all times. He's always with us, so you can always talk with Brian, operations manager for the village of Lytton.
Yeah.
So
Good.
it really works so good that he's everywhere in a way, so he could help fill that gap too, right?
Yeah. Well, I like to see it become something where somebody on council could act as the, perhaps someone to lobby for things and to help be a spokesperson for the fire department and things that you're trying to do.
Absolutely. And we're more than open to establishing another date and time, bi-weekly or weekly or whatnot, to sit down with the council person attached to us and discuss things. So.
Great. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
You guys are doing a great job.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, and it's an excellent report. Great to see the numbers increasing. And when I read the report in the notes here, I underlined sense of pride where you had written that, and I just thought that that's so important, and it's really good to hear you talk so passionately about that. So that's great. Okay, we have a motion to put forward to accept this for information. Councillor Lightfoot.
Yes. Do you want me to read it or?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay, I move that council receive the fire department update report for information.
And a seconder.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor McCann. All those in favor?
Yeah.
Carried. Thank you so much. All right, we'll move on to item number 9, which is correspondence. And we do have 2 items that came in for information. One around the ambulance, the changes with the BC Emergency Health Service. And the other, the other from Minister Kahlon that you had mentioned earlier around the housing. So it looks like we have 2 separate motions. So can we have a motion to accept the BC Emergency Health Service letter?
Sure.
That would be Councillor McCann, and a second. Accepting this for information, that is. All those in favor? Thank you, Councillor Lightfoot as a seconder. All those in favor?
I just wanted to ask a question.
Okay, I'm sorry, we have a question.
I just wanted to ask you, Mayor O'Connor.
Okay.
Reading the one about the emergency health services and the community paramedic care. And I just wondered if you had been updated recently about that service, because someone else was mentioning that recently.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything since Corrine came for the coffee meeting here, or happened to show up and chat a little bit. I did have a conversation with her prior to that, but I haven't heard anything since then. So no updates.
Thanks.
Okay. All those in favor, did I already do that?
Yeah.
Carried. Now a motion to accept the housing initiative letter for information.
Sure.
Councillor McCann.
And Toss seconded.
And Councillor Toss second. Any questions?
No, I asked it.
Comments? Thank you. All those in favor?
Yes.
Carried. Perfect. All right. We're going to move on to verbal reports. Item number 10. Where is mine? Yeah, so our last council meeting was on December 13th. A month ago, we didn't, of course, hold a meeting between Christmas and New Year's this year. So I attended 3 regional district meetings in Kamloops on the 2 days following the 13th, that last meeting, a regular TNRD board meeting, a committee meeting of the whole, and a hospital district meeting. On December 17th, I was invited and gave greetings at the holiday train and showed appreciation there for the donation that CPKC has made and Canada Food Banks, I guess, to our local food bank. I continue to attend the Monday coffees at the parish hall. We kept them going all for the last month, every day except for Christmas Day. And in fact, on New Year's Day, we had close to 35 people show up for a potluck lunch after coffee. It was such a positive way to start the new year. Those were the meetings and events I attended. And other than that, I did have a lot of conversations with residents and community members. Yeah, and I just really appreciated my time reflecting on the past year over the Christmas break and thinking about the year to come. Of course, I spent time with my family. Finally, before I pass it on to the next councillor, I just want to make an announcement that as part of the rebuilding funding received from the province, the Village of Lytton will be launching a program for residents in partnership with the province to cover archaeological costs up to $5,000. The program will be for those who lost their buildings on June 30th of 2021. And more details, though, will come out, such as the timeline of the program, and that will be available soon to everyone. So that's just a heads up for everyone that will be coming. So I will turn it over now to Councillor Toss.
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. That's a welcome announcement. Thank you. I don't have a lot to report since our last meeting on December 13th. The last month has gone very fast. I was very sad to hear of 3 community members passing since our last meeting. So I'd like to offer condolences to their families, and the community as a whole has lost some great people since the fire, and it saddens me. I met with Pacifican this morning to learn more about the business program rollout, which was really informative. And hope to learn more about it. And I really have nothing else to report. I'll be in the Village of Lytton next week to attend some meetings and tour the village. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. I too attended a number of meetings, not a lot as much. It was nice and quiet. But the 17th, I did go to the Holiday Train performance and to the hall after for a little warm-up event. The 18th of December, the coffee with council, and January 1st, the council potluck lunch, and the 8th again. So 3 coffees with council Mondays. It's getting to be a nice little habit. January 9th, yes, was that yesterday? Yes, yesterday I attended the Council Heritage Committee meeting, the first one after the break. My general report is that it was nice to see community members gather for events over the holiday season and to join them for the social events. The prospect of preparing for new buildings, both for village infrastructure and for homes, is both exciting and a little intimidating, and I'm eager to participate in the process. And like Councillor Toss, I send out my condolences as well to everyone that's been affected by the losses in our community in the last couple of weeks or so. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Michelle.
I don't have anything to report really since the last meeting. I've been to town a few times, talked to a few people that are rebuilding, but other than that, it was quiet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Michelle. You must be excited that the Jackass is open for two-way traffic. All right, Councillor Lightfoot.
I too attended the holiday train, and it helped get me into the Christmas spirit. Such an unseasonably warm December was pleasant, and I think the next couple of days are going to make up for it. However, I met with the Unmet Needs Committee just before Christmas, and there's a general dissatisfaction in the amount of progress that they've made, and the group as a whole is wanting to see some direction from council Many of them still want to be involved, but they're looking for some guidance from our council, so we'll have to discuss that at some workshop or something in the future. There's a meeting with them next week also. I will attend out at the mill. I attended a couple of coffee clutches. It's always nice to see people, and that's about it. I too am filled with sorrow for the loss of our community members. Time is marching on, as we all know, but it's never easy. On another note, 2024 is the year of the dragon in Chinese, and I saw our local Chinese museum had put in their building permit on the 888th day, and she was given comment that 8s are really lucky. So they feel that she'll have a lot of success. And if you add up 2024, that comes to an 8 too. So I'm looking forward to great things happening in the coming year.
Thank you. All right, so we have come now to the end of the open meeting, and we're going to be moving into closed meeting. So can I please have a motion for us to do so? Item number 12, Councillor McCann.
Sure, I'll move that we move into, close the meeting to public to discuss matters related to community charter sections 91A, 91C, 91L, to discuss all of these important things.
Okay. So thank you, everyone, for attending the open meeting, and I'm going to turn it back over to CEO Storoshenko.
Sorry, I didn't get a seconder on that.
I'm sorry, I didn't ask for a seconder. Councillor Lightfoot is the seconder. All those in favor of moving over to the closed meeting? Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mayor Connor. So that concludes the public portion of the regular council meeting of January 10th, 2024. We ask that the public and staff please remove yourselves from the meeting as we go into the closed session. Thank you for attending today's meeting and have a wonderful night. And I also invite council to take a short recess while I reset the meeting to a closed.
Thank you.
Lisa, do I have to stay for this one?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, thank you.